Hey there we are. Um, hey, this is Jim Hart. I am the founding attorney here at Hawthorne Law, and I thought that what I would do today is go live to answer some questions. I've got about an hour, so not too much time, but I thought I would. This is something I'm trying. I've been promising that I would do on a more regular basis, and Friday afternoons for me seem to be the best time to do this. So So anyway, I thought I would just go and answer some questions. I have a ton of comments that I can go through. A lot of people post comments, and I don't always get to answer all of them because there's just so many at this point with my channel. So I'm going to here's the priority that's going to happen here. A couple things you need to know. Number one, I can't give legal advice. So if you answer a question that's really specific to you, in your situation, I'm not going to be able to answer that, nor would I suggest that you should even ask legal questions on a live stream like this because while I'm a lawyer, I'm not your lawyer. And frankly, anything that you post in here is public and can be viewed by anyone. So if uh, I don't recommend that we get into sensitive legal issues here on the stream. That being said, if there are general questions about like how do LLCs work or what is an S corporation or things like that, then I am happy to try and answer those. Like, see, Rachel just asked a great question. Let's see, I can put this up on the screen. Is there a certain amount I should make in my LLC before I elect S corp status? And yes, I typically tell people somewhere between $25,000 to $50,000 profit per owner is an appropriate amount to make before you do elect S corporation status. Now, a lot of the questions that I have in the comments I'm not going to be able to share them on the screen, but I am just going to kind of go through them. And as I'm talking, if something comes in your head and you think about it, feel free to please ask away. But the first question I have is from Ethan Ackerland, who posted on my video how to set up an LLC legally. He said, "Hey Jim, love your content." Oh, and by the way, I will also say, I have not reviewed any of these comments ahead of time, so I'm kind of going off the cuff here. Maybe this is smart, maybe this isn't smart. I don't know. We'll see how well I can do with this. But anyway, Ethan says, and Shayna says, "Good morning. Good to see you again, Shayna. Hey Jim, love your content. I would like to suggest a video since I could not find this information on your channel. I am forming my LLC and the operating agreement I am using is asking what I am contributing to my LLC, money or assets, and the information I'm finding says this is important so that you have a stake in the business." Hold on, there's more. "My questions I'm wondering is how are these contributions affected during tax season and how much is a reasonable amount for startup costs? Or is this not all that important? Thank you for the great content." So basically the question here is, what Ethan is getting at is, number one, how much, I think what he's saying is, how much is a reasonable amount to contribute? Now, I am not a tax attorney, but I believe, if I'm not mistaken, you can talk to a tax accountant, but I believe that there is a limit on the amount of money that you can contribute to an LLC and write that off as startup expenses. And I think the limit is around $5,000. Now, there are different ways that you can structure that. You can structure it as those can be expenses. You can structure it as owners, initial capital contributions to the LLC. So there are different ways to do that. How you structure those contributions will have an effect on your taxes because they can either be considered, like they can be loans, they can be owners' contributions. It just depends on your situation. And then, like I said, in terms of startup expenses, I believe the limit on what you can deduct for startup expenses is $5,000. I think you can go over that, but then you have to start prorating that over a period of time. Again, I'm not a tax accountant, so I'm not sure, but I believe that's right. Let's see. I'm looking for questions. Kathleen says, "I currently live in New York, but will be moving to Florida in a year. I'm in the process of starting a business, but not yet generating cash. I want to start the LLC in Florida, but will be residing in New York. Should I wait until I reside in Florida to do this? I'm currently in an incubator program until March of 2021. Well, March of 2021 was last month, and she just posted this question 24 hours ago. So, um, so I always tell people, form your LLC in the state where you live and reside, and intend to reside. So in this situation, let's say I decided that I wanted to move to Florida, and I was going to move to Florida in, by the next beginning of the next school year for my kids. And I need to set up a new LLC. I would either do one of two, and I already have a business entity. I would do one of two things. I would either, I would just wait and set it up in Florida once I got there, or I would get a virtual address and set it up in Florida now. Probably, because it just doesn't make sense to incur the expense of starting an LLC in a state where you're going to be leaving within 3 to 6 months. If it's anything beyond that, if it's out in the future, if you're like, you know what, I really would like to move to Florida someday, that's going to be a different answer, I think. But if it's like, no, I know I'm going to be moving in the next, within 12 months, then you might want to consider setting it up. Or if you already have plans to move, you might want to consider setting up your business in the state where you're going to be moving to, and getting a virtual address there, and just start operating there. Ashley says, if I were to set up my LLC using a company that won't be named, is that considered my registered agent? Can my address be changed if I messed up and use my personal address? I'm learning so much from your videos. I wish I found you before I started. You would have to sign up for registered agent services. Just because you use a certain company, even my company, to set up your LLC does not mean that we are automatically your registered agent. You would have to add that on. Typically, it's between $100, $200 a year for that service. And if you messed up and used your personal address and you would like to change that, depending on where you are in the filing process, if the state hasn't processed your articles yet, then maybe you can contact the state and see if they can update it. If they have processed everything, then you're probably going to need to file an amendment. Let's see. Rachel says, should I be consulting with an accountant or an attorney about how to structure my business? Maybe both. I don't know. Accountants will frequently give advice on how to set up a business. In my experience, I found it's not always correct. Also, there is no attorney-client privilege when you talk to an accountant, like there is when you talk to an attorney. So that's really up to you. You can schedule a call with us, and we'd be more than happy to talk with you. In fact, I'll put a link to do that if that's something you're interested in. So here's the link if you need to schedule a call with me, and I'm more than happy to talk to you about that. Let's see. David says, as a sole-owned LLC, it doesn't matter what you get for a salary because you own the LLC and will pay taxes at your level on every dollar your company makes. It's not on every dollar your company makes. It's on the net profit your company makes. Toya says, I live in New York. Can I start my LLC in North Carolina? You can do anything you want. Should you start in North Carolina? I don't know. It would depend on your business. And that's why I said I can't really give legal advice here. But I don't know why you would set it up in North Carolina unless you have business here or you lived here part-time. Rachel says, thanks so much. Your content has been super helpful. Thank you, Rachel. I appreciate that. Um, Victor says, I recently moved to California, from California to North Carolina, and I'm trying to open a business. Can I open my business with my California driver's license, or do I need a North Carolina driver's license? You don't need either, Victor. You can set up your business. You don't need to produce a driver's license to set up your business. Now, that being said, once you're established here in North Carolina, I think there's a law that says you have to get a new North Carolina driver's license within 3 months or so. But you don't need to show a driver's license to set up a business, at least not in North Carolina. Let's see. Minhee Choi says, do RA, I think he means registered agents, allow businesses to use their address as their business address to keep home addresses private for online businesses? No. The registered agent address is the registered agent address. You're not going to use that address for the business address. You need to get your own address for the business. Let's see. Snakelock 2007 says, "Hey Jim, how do you know if you've been approved as an SCorp after filing? The the IRS will send you a letter in the mail to let you know if you've been approved." Does the late SCorp election apply to all states? Thanks for clearing this up because I've been wondering about this for a while. I have read online that you only have 60 days, so that's good to know because nobody knows exactly how much money they'll be making in the first 60 days of business to know if making an S-corp election is even worth it yet within a short time frame. So, and this is from EM. You actually have 75 days from the date that you file your LLC to set up your S corporation. There is a procedure in place for late election relief from the IRS, but and this is a federal issue, so it does apply to all 50 states. Madison says, what's the benefit on starting out as a sole proprietorship DBA instead of going straight into an LLC? Wouldn't it be more cost effective to start off as an LLC? I mean, maybe. It depends. It comes down to the factors that I talk about in the first pillar of my Lock It Down legal protection system in terms of setting up a legal foundation. And I've talked about this before on the channel. Before you decide to set up an LLC, number one, do you have assets that need to be protected? Number two, does it make sense from a tax standpoint to do that because you're going to be needing that S corp election at some point? Is another issue. And then I would say number three, are you generating revenue from the business? Number four, do you intend to sell the business at some point? Number five, can you insure the business or your home or your personal property with insurance such that it doesn't matter if you have the LLC protection or not? So there's all sorts of factors you need to look at in terms of deciding whether or not you need to set up an LLC. I typically tell people when you're just getting started, do it as a sole proprietorship. Once you're making some money, then you can go ahead and set up the LLC. Unless you have a legitimate reason why you should set up an LLC from the beginning. Catch88 says, wow, I'm glad I picked your video over the one that had the fancy thumbnail. I'm glad too. Shoot, I'm not able to. Oh, there we go. Savage says, I knew a guy. I don't know if I'm going to be able to answer this. I knew a guy. I love the question in the questions to start off with. I knew a guy. I knew a guy that had a hobby of painting cars. It was all cash in hand. I doubt he declared it as income. I doubt that too. I asked him why he didn't go legit. He told me that at one time he had taken out a business license, but for the first 2 years, he did zero business and paid his income taxes as he normally would using his social security number. And then the city of Los Angeles hit him with fines and back taxes estimated upon averaging the tax revenue of similar businesses in his area, $17K. He had to prove to the city of Los Angeles that the business did not operate and make an income, and he was terrified. In the end, he was able to beat the rap. As he said, that is when he discovered that a lot of immigrants, mostly Vietnamese, don't have business licenses. Instead, they are just hobbyists who enjoy leafing through Craigslist and meet new people at coffee shops. No real question there, but that sucks for that guy if that really happened. Is it weird? Tadashi says, is it weird that I understood you and got lost at the same time? So the taxes account, should I create a new bank account for that? Or can it stay in my business bank account? Or could I allocate it to my business savings account for the end of the year? Well, there's a lot of stuff going on there. I think what he's talking about is my, I think what he's referring to is the profit first system that I typically talk about. So in the profit first system, basically the way the system works is any revenue that comes in twice a month, you're going to allocate that revenue to one of 3 different accounts. There might be there's going to be a tax account, which I typically recommend 15% goes to the tax account, 10%, 5 to 10% goes to the profit account. So how much is that? So we're at 25%, leaving 75%. So then the remainder, it gets split between owner's pay and expenses for the business. And that's the whole system, basically. And so twice a month, I go through and transfer money to those accounts. And then what I do is I take the money from the profit account and the tax account, and I actually transfer it to a separate bank account so that it never is I never think about it. It's never going to get spent. The only time it's going to get spent is once a quarter when I take a profit distribution, and and then every month or quarter when I have to pay taxes. One of the nice things about doing this is I can go in and delete some spam comments that I've missed. I get most of them, but sometimes I miss them. When you say get a payroll provider, is that also the same as a biller? I don't know what a biller is, but a payroll provider I use. Here's a link to the provider that I use. And I highly recommend them. That's Gusto. All right, looking for some other questions here. JM says, I'm from Rhode Island and I started my online, I assume she means business, last year, but I never got any sales, even with marketing expenses, travel expenses, marketing, referral, etc. Can I still do a Schedule C, Tia? Yeah, Tia, you can. Absolutely, you can. So you just keep track of all your expenses and then you can write them off at the end of the year. Jay says, is there a way to take over the name of a deceased family relative's business? And if so, what's my first step? I mean, I guess number one, it would depend on if they left that business to you in their will or in their estate plan. If there was no will or estate plan, then you're going to need to go through probate. And somebody's going to have to inherit the business because it's an asset, I presume. And then once you're able to acquire the business through legal channels, then certainly you can do whatever you want with it, I suppose. That's a loaded question though, because there's so many issues at play in that question that that would require legal advice to really get through. All right, let's see. Genesis says, great info. How does the money flow? And I think the question is about forming an LLC as a holding company. If I want to personally contribute to the operating company, do I need to sign a resolution and then send that money to the holding company, and from there sign a resolution and send that money to my operating company, and vice versa? Okay, my head's hurting a little bit. I'm not sure how that works. If you want to personally contribute money to the business, then you take your money and you deposit it in the name of the business. And yes, you can document that if you want. But then in terms of transferring it from business to business, yes, again, you would likely want to have some sort of, resolution that says we've decided to invest this amount of money into this business. But what really, the way it really works is at the end of the year, the company, the child company we're going to do a profit and loss on them, and all the income is going to flow, or the losses are going to flow to the parent company for tax purposes. Argent says, thank you to the attendee who mentioned GoDaddy for bookkeeping. It was timely since I've been looking for alternatives to the more expensive solutions this early in my journey. I was just actually talking with a financial guy yesterday about that. I didn't actually realize that GoDaddy had a bookkeeping service. I'd be hesitant about that. I'd look into using like a QuickBooks. QuickBooks is the best, and for like $20 a month, you can get set up. It's got all the reports you'd ever need, but definitely hire a bookkeeper or an accountant to help you set up QuickBooks the right way if you don't know what you're doing. Erica says, great info. How would I go about changing my address on my articles of organization in California? You need to file an amendment. LH says, hello, I would like to ask some information about tax return 2020. I opened the LLC company. I am the owner and only employee. What should I do if I made all product by myself in Europe? I purchased the stuff here. How am I going to file my tax returns? Thank you very much for your information. LH, you're going to need to talk to an international tax accountant because you've got all sorts of issues going on there. All right. Jeff says, I have a trucking company LLC. It failed, but it isn't totally dead. 9 years old. I have property owned by the LLC. Okay. I started another LLC, kind of like a holding company, purchased the trucking LLC. Okay. I don't know enough about what you're talking about, Jeff. That's, again, would qualify as individual advice. I can't answer those questions. I'm sorry. Let's see. I'm not interested in the business that has not existed for several years. Just interested in the rights of the name because it is a family name. Thank you. Again, Jay, I'm sorry. I can't answer that question. I just don't have enough information to even know what you're talking about. And again, that would be me giving legal advice. Natalie V says, hi, Jim. For further clarification on the S corporation tax status, the net income that passes through to the owner gets the 20% qualified business income deduction. Yes, that's right. That's right. As long as you pay yourself a reasonable salary. Business checking account, should I use my LLC name or the DBA name? Typically, the way it's going to be done is you're going to set it up as if it's a checking account for an LLC and you have a DBA that's different than the name of the LLC. Typically, the way you do that is it would be the name of the LLC, DBA, and then it'd be both kind of, and then the whatever the DBA name is. That's typically the way to do it. The bank will help you with that. Let's see. Chink I Joss says, what about if you are starting an online boutique? Do you think it is necessary to file for an LLC? I just want to make sure I'm doing everything legally with no later surprises. I mean, I don't know. A lot of people ask me, should I start an LLC or should I not? And the answer is really, you look to those factors I've already talked about. Do you have assets to protect? Are you generating revenue? Do you have insurance that could protect you in the event something happens to the LLC? Do you intend to sell the business at some point? Do you want to look professional? All those things. Let's see. John, who's one of my OBLT students, says, hi, Jim. When hiring, how can I make sure they meet the federal requirements for independent contractor status? Secondly, should I use a payroll service like Gusto for contractors? Gusto will process 1099s for contractors, John, and what happens is when you set up the contractor through Gusto will send them all the information they need to fill out and complete online and then send it back to you. And then they'll tell you if you need to get additional information. In terms of how do you make sure they meet federal requirements for independent contractor is typically going to be governed state by state. So like California in recent years has really cracked down on people using independent contractors who are actually employees. So that's going to be on a state by state basis. And then the IRS is cracking down on businesses using independent contractors that should be employees because they're not receiving payroll taxes that they should be getting. So it really, if what you're worried about is how do I make sure they're legal to work, if you hire somebody as an employee, an independent contractor is not going to matter as much. You just need them to fill out the W-9 to show that they've got a tax ID number or a social security number, however that's going to work. But for an employee, they have to provide a copy of their driver's license or passport or, utility statements, or there's all sorts of things that need to be provided. And Gusto walks you through that when you're doing that. Let's see. Conscious Mamas Movement says, hey there, I just started an LLC in North Carolina and I'm wondering about how to withhold sales tax registering with the Department of Revenue. I'm not making income yet. Is this relevant? It might be very relevant depending on your situation. I don't know enough about, there's not enough information in the question to really answer that though, because it's going to be dependent on what are you selling. If you're selling things, then you need to like physical products to other residents of North Carolina, then you probably would need to withhold sales tax. So Matthew says, for healthcare providers who have malpractice insurance, starting an LLC for tax advantages and being taxed as an SCorp, do we need insurance for the LLC? I'm not quite sure. I'm sorry, I'm just reading through this. For healthcare providers who have malpractice insurance, starting an LLC for tax advantages and being taxed as an S corporation, do we need insurance for the LLC? I don't. I would imagine. I'm not quite sure exactly what you're asking, but here's the answer that I give for most people. So when you're setting up a business, you need to have like all the types of insurance, right? So as a lawyer, I have professional malpractice insurance. I have a general liability insurance for my where I physically work. I have, car insurance on my car that's owned by my law firm. So, I have 3 different types of insurance right there just for related to my law firm. So, I mean, I guess, yes, I don't know. I don't honestly know. All right, cool. Let's see. Anna says, as a business and IP attorney, most of this video is correct. She's talking about my trademark registration mistakes. However, if someone files a mark themselves and later wishes to grandeur to their business, I think she means granted to their business, a simple assignment can be filed. It's not a big deal and not the most common mistake. I think what she's correct on that. However, if you file your if you file a trademark what I was referring to in the video, if I'm not mistaken, is people who own an LLC that who have an LLC. How do I say this? They have an LLC and they need to start their trademark, and so they file their trademark under their own personal name, thinking it belongs to them. Then it's void from the very beginning. You have to refile it under the name of the LLC if it hasn't been approved yet. I think that's what she's referring to. In fact, I might want to actually reply to that. Let's see, question. So if other people have questions, go ahead and post them. I'm going to type a quick reply to this. A second here. All right. Bumby says, I have a brand that I want to get started. Do I need an LLC? I don't know. We've gone over this question a couple times today and other times, and basically the question, the way I look at it is the analysis I would run is, do you have assets to protect? Do you have revenue? Do you have insurance that can cover your personal assets if something happens to the LLC? Do you have, are you intending to sell the business at some point? All these are different types of questions that you're going to need to ask before you decide whether or not you need to set up an LLC yet. Okay. Uh-oh. Okay, there we go. So Jeremy says, such great info. I got my finger on the trigger to start my thing, but I took a step back and started educating myself with your content and content alike. I didn't want to talk to legal to find out what's best for me and waste the time on what is a DBA, SLLC, LLC, LLC. I wanted to have a general idea and go from there, and I'm picking up what you're laying down. Okay, great. I think that's good. No question there, but cool. Rosalind says, my business partner is in Africa, so how can I include her and also in the payment agreement section of the business. That's going to be pretty complicated. You're probably going to need a lawyer to help you with that. Bible Breakdown says, hey, Jim, I have a question. I just legally started my business in June of 2020. Is there a PPP loan I possibly can get? Because the SBA application I've applied for state that my business had to be legal before the COVID hit. I haven't looked into it, but I know there was another round of PPP funding with the new bill that came out, but I don't know what the requirements are, honestly. Hi, first, sorry for my English, not my primary language. This is David. He says, I'm from the EU. I own a few shares of some stock. Just received a K1 form 1065. It was pre-filled for me. Where should I send this paper or where to submit the information? Is there any web page to foreign citizens? Yeah, you use this when you fill out your taxes. It's going to be listed under income for your tax return. Let's see. Love your video. Clutch Killer says, love your videos. I'm about to start an LLC for my mobile mechanic business. I come to you, but I'm located in Southern Charlotte area. Do you know anyone a bit closer that can help me out? Well, we can. We do LLCs all over the country. T2 says, I just got my LLC registration and filed for my EIN. What's the next steps? Oh, that's great. Congratulations. Open up a bank account and get going with your business. That's the next steps. There's a checklist. If you go to my website, let me see if I can pull it up. Let's see here. I'm not sure if this is right. Oh, yeah, this is it. So if you go to this website, T2, you can download my ultimate business building legal checklist for online entrepreneurs. It's pretty, I should probably charge for this. But that's a good way for next steps. Lily says, thank you for all the information and for your time, Jim. You're greatly appreciated. You're very welcome, Lily. Thank you. John says, any recommendation from your experience where to find a good bookkeeper, accountant, CPA? Yes. Emily Sandberg is a good bookkeeper. You're just getting started. Let me see if I can find her name. Yeah, so this is, let me see if I can do this. Share my screen. Yeah, so it's emilysandberg.net. And she's a bookkeeper. So she'd be a great person to reach out to. Another person, let me just take this down. So that's Emily. Emily's great. I will And then the other one I would say on Instagram, I don't know if I'm going to be able to pull this up here. Let's see if I can. I don't do a whole lot on Instagram. Oh, he's right there as the first post. So that's helpful. It's Michael King. And so this is Michael right here. It's I am Michael King, and on Instagram you can find him. And I.am.michael.king. And so so that he's a financial coach / virtual CFO. All right. I apologize if I'm a little tired today. I need to pick me up. I need some coffee. Cynthia says, speak to us about SCorp, C-Corp, and how we can add our LLC. So you don't, so an SCorp is a tax election. It's not an actual business entity. A C-Corp is a business entity. So if you form a C-Corp, then you can elect to be taxed as an S-Corp. If you form an LLC, you can elect to be taxed as an S-Corp. But a C-Corp and an LLC, C-Corp and a LLC are two completely separate business entities. So if you have a C-Corp, you need to change it to an LLC. You can't add your LLC. That's not the way it works. So you start with the business entity you want, and you add on S corporation as a tax strategy, tax status, if that's what you want, tax election. You say online a lot. Can these be applied to any business like what you were just recommended for T2? Jason. Yes. I say online because these are most of the people that I work with are online businesses, blogs, social media people, course creators, coaches, people that are doing business online. Yeah, but any of these strategies would apply to a brick and mortar business as well. Phasma says, oh, my kids would love your name. Started a DBA, got an EIN and a bank account. If not making income yet, am I still required to report it? Phasma, if you, if you make income, you have to file a tax return. And so if you're not making income yet, then you might have expenses that you want to write off as losses against your income. So I would check with your local laws or federal laws, TAWs, about when you need to file a tax return. Sure, Michael, he was on the call yesterday. Liked him a lot. Thank you. Awesome. I'll check out Emily as well. Oh, yeah, that's right. Sorry. Yeah, I forgot. Yeah, you know Michael. So Michael's great. Jason says, thanks. All right, let's see. What other comments we got? I got somebody who says, let's see. Can you do a video of how to start up your business with regards to companies, house, other numbers, how to start up your taxes, how to store all your invoices, receipts, basically everything step by step that we need on the accounts legal side? Yeah, I've done that in a lot of videos. See, I'm just reading through these comments and looking for questions. And obviously, if you have questions, please feel free to post them in the comments here. And I'm also looking for questions I haven't answered already. So one person asked about buying a truck under the name of their LLC. That's a really complicated process, and you need to make sure you go about it the right way. There's a lot of tax issues that are implicated when you do that. I have to stop saying my wife tells me I say too much. I got to work on that. Manuel says, I'm a realtor. I have an LLC for my company. Should I open a business account and deposit my commission there? If you're being paid, if the LLC is being paid the commission, then definitely you should. J-Dub says, are my startup expenses tax deductible, such as costs for LLC, registered agent, trademark, etc.? Yes, they are. Let's see. Sorry, I'm just looking for more questions here. A lot of these questions we've already answered. Let's see. Can you get an EIN as a sole proprietor? Jordan, yes, you can get an EIN as a sole proprietor, and I recommend it if you're going to be having a separate business. It's basically, if the sole proprietorship is going to be your business foundation, yeah, you definitely want to get a separate EIN number and set up a separate bank account for that. I live in California, and I know the laws here are more whack than other states. Yes, that's true. You do have some wacky laws. Yeah. Oh. Hello, Mr. Jim. What are some of the best options for business loan and documents form names? I would go to your local bank. Hold on a sec. My computer's going really slow today. So, best options for business loan. I would go to your local bank if you need a loan. I'm not quite sure what you mean by documents form names. So evidently, a lot of people got upset because in a video I did a couple years ago, I was kind of sick while I did the video, and I talked about SNOT. So this person, Erica, says, I don't care if you talk about SNOT or not, because I like how you are so laid back and not talking in technical terms. Most of us don't understand. Thank you so much. Thank you, Erica. I appreciate that. Jordan says, thank you. I believe you just answered this, but I used a separate bank account for my startup expenses. Am I able to write those expenses off? You should be. You just need to talk to an accountant or a bookkeeper to make sure you account for it the right way. That's the way I would do that. Mudster says, got a question. What would the best option be here? Wanting to start a fab shop out of my garage, but also wanting to move to a different state in a year or so. Should I start a sole P or LLC in which state? I think is the question. I don't know what a fab shop is other than, a fabulous shop. Is that maybe what you mean? But if you don't know when you're going to move, I would just go with the state that you're at right now. I think we talked about that at the beginning. If you go back and watch one of the first couple questions that I answered at the very beginning of the stream, we actually talked about that for a little bit. I've been getting a lot of questions lately about cryptocurrency. I will tell you right now, I don't know really anything about it. I've never invested in cryptocurrency. I don't really know how it works. Um, Metal fabrication. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think I don't know. I don't think there's a question there. So this is a good question regarding expenses. Is it okay to charge business expenses on a personal visa for the sole purpose of earning points, but then pay the charge from our business checking account as it is a business expense? Would that cause the corporate veil to be pierced? If you're going to use your personal Visa or MasterCard or whatever to pay for expenses related to business, make sure they're all expenses related to business. Now, if you the alternative way to do it is if you you could charge some things to the business on your card, and then you could expense those things to the business. And so basically you fill out an expense report. I use a program called Expensify. You fill out an expense report, you submit it to the business, and then the business can reimburse you, and then you can pay for the card. Do I offer registered agent services in Florida? I do. Alif says, I have 2 members LLC which own assets. What is the best way to be my partners to buy my partner's shares? Should I buy the assets as a different company or buy his shares in the LLC? I can't give personal advice like that. I'm sorry, Alif. I would love to, but I can't. If providing healthcare in multiple states other than the state where you're developing your LLC, is it better to establish a foreign qualified entity or PLLC? Again, this is fairly, I think you're asking a fairly specific question for your personal situation, and I can't answer that question without, I can't give legal advice. Let's see. Anna says, can you be your own registered agent? I'm getting uncomfortable on this chair. I'm going to pop this thing up. See how that is. Oh, much better. Okay. Can you be your own registered agent? Says Anna. Yes, you can be your own registered agent. I don't necessarily recommend it, but it is something that you can do. Oh, gosh, I'm tired today. It's been a long week. All right. All right, so this is about banks, I think. Let me see what this person has to say. I have a question. I was with PNC and now TD Bank. Happy with them. I own and run my own business. Why with one bank and run a business account through the IN number only and another run through your social security account number? I asked, the one isn't going to mess things up. Okay, I don't know really what Remo was asking. I kind of got confused by that question. Thanks for the info. Ready to get this party started? Is an accountant a good idea along with an LLC? Of course. Yes, I would definitely recommend getting an accountant or a bookkeeper. I'm so grateful to live in Georgia where an LLC is only $100 and $50 annually to renew. Thank you for this info. You're welcome, Jessica. All right. What other questions do people have? We've been going almost an hour. I'm probably going to hop off here in just a minute, unless other people have some questions. feel free to just comment in the comments below. Let me know. When do you need a foreign qualified entity versus a PLLC? Thanks for everything. A foreign qualified entity would be if you are doing business in a state. If you set up an LLC, okay, I'll give an example. I live in North Carolina, and let's see here. Sorry. I live in North Carolina. I set up an LLC here, but let's say I decide I want to open up a separate office in Florida, because I'm licensed in Florida as well. So I open up a virtual office in Florida. Then I would have to set up a foreign entity in Florida because it would basically be tied to my business here in North Carolina. Does that make sense? So I set up a foreign entity in Florida for that LLC. And basically the way that happens is, so I go to Florida, and I'm not going to explain this very well. So maybe the opposite way is going to be a better way to explain it. So what I see a lot of people do is they set up an LLC in like Wyoming because they think that's a good place to set up an LLC, but they live in North Carolina. Well, then you have to register that Wyoming LLC in North Carolina as a foreign entity as well, because you're doing business in this state, even though it's also registered in the other state. So basically you have to register anywhere where you have a physical office and you're actually operating. Now, a lot of people operate in all 50 states doing an online business. And in that situation, as long as your main office is in the state where you live, which is usually what's going to happen, then you're just going to set up that LLC in that state. But if you have physical offices in multiple states, then you'll need foreign entities in those other states as well. Hope that makes sense. A PLLC is if you're offering professional services. So for me, I actually am not an LLC. I'm a corporation, but it's considered a PA. So that stands for professional association. And then if I was an LLC, I would be a PLLC, professional limited liability company. And those are typically referred to doctors, lawyers, accountants, therapists, different people like that who are registered with the state. And so there's a little bit more of a complicated process to get your LLC registered. Abraham says, if you set up an LLC for a side gig where you're not making too much money, 8 to 10K, is that 8 to 10K a month, a year? But you have a W-2 job of about 100, wouldn't it make sense to leave the LLC as a sole proprietor or shift it to SCorp if you are not taking dividends from it in salary? I mean, it really comes down to how much money the LLC is making on its own. If it's only making 8 to 10K, it probably doesn't make sense to be an S corporation if that's an annual. Do you know of any way I can register my business at another location besides my personal residence? I just learned I cannot use a PO box. I'm an online business. Yeah, you can go to Earth Class Mail or UPS store, or you can rent for a couple $100 a month. You could rent a virtual office space somewhere where they'll accept your mail and then forward it to you. There's all sorts of options. Cool. Let's see. Other questions? My business address is in Georgia. However, I do travel to Florida and do installs for customers. Do I need a foreign entity for Florida? If you don't have a Florida address, my criteria, and again, I have to be careful, Jason. I can't give you legal advice, so I don't know to what extent you're doing business in Florida. But if you do not have an office in that state, I don't know that it's necessary. Again, it's going to depend on your personal situation. So if you have questions about that, I would talk to an attorney. Let's see. All right. So we're up right at an hour. I have to run. I've got some things I need to take care of before the end of the day on Friday, but this was fun. Um, let's see. Jason says I install kitchen countertops. Yeah, that's going to be a little bit different because, um, I mean, you might have employees, you might need workers' comp, there's other things at play there. So I would definitely maybe reach out to an attorney and see if they think that you need to have an LLC filed there or not. Because then the other thing is, if you look at your current business structure, does it exempt, certain if something happens and somebody gets hurt or you mess up an install, is your insurance going to cover you if you're doing it outside of your current state? So there's a lot of issues that you really need to look at there for that. John says, have a great weekend. Thank you. You too, John. I'm going to jump off now, but thank you everyone for being on today. And I'll be back next week. I think this is something I'd like to do on a weekly basis from here on out. So have a great weekend, folks. Take care.